Greetings, everyone. Hope you're having a great day, having a great time. Speaking, it is Lunga Mr. Arthur Kumal. Once again, it is that time in this channel where we aim to inspire, to equip, and to empower you into a purposeful and a transformative living. I thought let me come again to share on a topic that is very much in my heart, Glezi Nzogu. I'd like us to look at the survival mentality and how to escape it. I would like us to look at survival mentality and how to escape it. Maybe let me start today's session like this. I have heard a lot of people saying, no one is without a problem on earth. No one is without a problem or an issue on earth. Bake bathi ke akekho ongenazo inkinga zakhe ngesizulu. Yeah, while kuyinto engiyizwayo futhi engingayiphiki, yes, everyone has that part in their life that challenges them, but what if that mentality and understanding, it's something that has been brought to us by the survival mentality, ukuthi vele sonke siyazama, sonke siyahlanganisa, sonke siyaphaphatha. Yabo? What if it's something that comes from an understanding that says there's no one on earth who's ever at the point where they are fully content with life and what life brings. And while that might be a case on its own, but one of the things I've come to learn is that the survival mentality or survival mode focuses on the very definition of it, surviving. It never puts you at a point where you logically think things through, but it always puts you at a point where you are a person who thinks in a way that is always in panic mode. Because let us be honest, survival is very essential when there are emergencies. Survival really does come out and shows up when there are emergencies, and is very recommendable for such instances. But we cannot continuously live on survival mode, and unfortunately, there are people who are stuck there in survival mode because survival mode has shown them to be of need. And unfortunately, as people, whenever we find ourselves being of need, we value that as a strength, you know. I remember in one of the sessions I had with a life coach, we were doing a SWOT analysis where you lay down your strength, weaknesses, opportunities, you know, and threats. And it's very easy to understand survival mode as your strength, because what survival mode does, it always tries to give a quick fix to a situation without thinking longevity, in most instances. And a lot of people who live in the survival mode, they don't understand the hidden dangers of being in the survival mode. And most often we do that. We overlook the dangers of what works for us at the moment, and we always protect it. Not so long ago, we did a video on self-sabotage. A lot of the things around self-sabotage can easily be portrayed as, you know, as qualities. Because remember that one of the things we mentioned on that video on self-sabotage, we talked on stagnation is always interpreted as preparation. Stagnation is always interpreted as preparation. And once you change your thinking into that, you will always be protecting self-sabotage, because you're not viewing it as stagnation, but you're viewing it as preparation. It's a similar case with survival mode. It will always show up as one of the qualities. And once something shows itself as a quality, it can never easily be confronted, because it would be as if you're confronting the quality that it comes with. Whereas, as I say, there are hidden dangers of the survival mode mentality. And maybe let us go to those hidden dangers for survival mentality. It most often focuses on, as I said, on the now, paying the bills, avoiding loss, getting through the today. And the problem with it is you stop designing a future and you start merely reacting to the present. And I know that there are a lot of philosophies around being an optimistic, being a pessimistic, being all those ist, and I'm neither advocating for any, but for this context of this video, I want us to look at the danger of not having the ability to look at the future and design it, and only live for the now, where you're not just living for the now because you are in the present moment, but you're living in the now because you are reacting to everything that is happening now because you are never prepared for it. And there's danger to that. And as I said, some of the dangers of these things, it's easy for one to interpret them as qualities. Hence, it is very important that we carefully dissect what's happening in us. To those who are first time in this channel, welcome, man. We always having such conversation on this platform. We always grab you to the front seat and have these confrontational conversations. Hence, one of the titling of this platform, it is Provoked Conversations, because that's exactly what we want you to do. It is to have these provoking conversations that normally you wouldn't be having, And the importance of them is that they are able to be indicators that are giving signals to you to where you stand, And again, let's go to the hidden dangers of survival mode. As I said, it easily traps you into short-term thinking. It traps you into looking at life in this little cocoon you're living in. It traps you into thinking you become short-sighted because you are in survival mode. You never expect or you never have the anticipation or the aspiration of the tomorrow because you're always living to survive the now, the today. And another thing that it does, or another hidden dangers of the survival mode, is that it shrinks your identity. It shrinks how you look at life. It shrinks how you look at people. It shrinks who you are, where you're heading, because it's survival mode. It shrinks your identity. You become a person who always looks at what's lacking, what hurts you, what you're running from. You are always, it almost even puts you in the victim side of life. You are always a victim, You are always a victim of circumstance. You're always a victim of life. You're always a victim of shortages. You are always a victim because it shrinks your identity. You never take accountability or responsibility of anything because you're operating within survival mode. And your identity becomes defensive instead of expansive. You don't ask, who am I becoming? You ask, how do I not fall apart? You are always waiting for the worst thing to happen so you could survive your way out of it. You really lose the optimism of life. You really lose the foresight of the future and the anticipation of it and the redesigning of it because you are a person who is in the survival mode. And I'm aware that a lot of people find themselves in the survival mode because of the lot of circumstances that life can throw at you. I know that there are families who have lost everything and they've been operating in survival mode since then. I'm aware that there are families who've lost a very important figure in the family and a person who was very essential in the progress and the life of the family. And they've been surviving ever since. So I'm not downplaying it to just a weakness mentality, but I am saying at some point you'll have to heal. At some point you'll have to give yourself grace enough to heal and give yourself enough grace to gradually come out from that zone, which is the survival zone, and start accepting life and start accepting the responsibilities that life has thrown in your hands and start getting up. you know. While it might seem harsh and it might seem lacking empathy, but if you know me, you will know how much of empathy and grace and concern I have for you. I'm so concerned to a point that I have to tell you the truth that at some point you'll have to leave the survival mode. I love you enough that I have to tell you that at some point you'll have to take some of the responsibilities life is throwing at you and start being optimistic. Start seeing the future. Start believing more. Start being optimistic. Start seeing the better that life can actually give you. And start seeing the good in you. Do not allow circumstances to change the identity, because one of the things we've mentioned that it shrinks your identity. Do not allow some of the things you have encountered to shrink your identity. And one of the things or the hidden dangers of survival mode is that it normalizes stress as personality. It normalizes stress as personality. I know people who, if you go to them, you talk to them, stress is always at the top of their life. Is always there. It's always available and there in their life. They are always stressed. They are always frustrated by something. Like, stress is always normalized, leading to chronic anxiety becoming your baseline. A lot of people have chronic anxiety as their baseline. It's there, it's always there. It's always there. Rest to those people feels irresponsible. Stillness feels unsafe. Stillness feels unsafe. There are people who cannot sit with their thoughts and actually listen to themselves thinking. There are people who cannot meditate for more than 20 minutes. They cannot, because they are afraid of sitting with their own thoughts. They're afraid of sitting with their own self. They fear silence. They really fear silence, because to them stillness feels unsafe. Stillness feels unsafe. Rest feels irresponsible. You know, because one of the things survival mode does to you, it normalizes stress as personality. But one of the dangers, as we are now going to be going to how then do we, a couple of tips on how we then do we come out from that zone or come out from survival mode. But one of the two last hidden dangers of survival mode is that it breeds scarcity thinking. It breeds scarcity thinking. It breeds scarcity thinking. There's never enough time. There's never enough money. There's never enough opportunity. And once a person has a scarcity issue, or once scarcity becomes the thing in their life, they normally never are content with anything that is happening around them. They are never satisfied, you know. As I said, there's never enough time, there's never enough money, there's never enough opportunity. Nothing is ever enough, you know. But one of the last dangers of survival mode is that it blocks growth. It blocks growth. Totally, it blocks it. And unfortunately, once growth is blocked in your life, you are trapped in that phase of life for the rest of your life. Once growth becomes a challenge and when growth becomes intimidating and it challenges the space you're protecting, the identity, or you're protecting the familiar identity you have, you are in trouble. You're in trouble. You'll always be complaining, you'll always be comparing, you'll always be competing, and you'll always be unsatisfied, you know? But the deep problem of survival mode is that survival mentality often outlives the situation that created it. Survival mentality often outlives the situation that created it. It often outlives the situation that created it. Hence, I said there are people who are still stuck on the passing of who passed, who was essential in the family. There are people who are still stuck in the incidents that happen, on the rejection they've had. There are people who are still stuck. Survival mentality often outlives the situation that created it. And again, I say this with all empathy and I say this with all sincerity of my heart. But unfortunately, for you to heal, it's a conversation you need to have. Because let me tell you something. From now, what happened that led you to that state, the environment has changed. The threat ended, and the identity stayed. Let me say that again. From what happened, from when the incident started, when you found yourself in the survival zone or survival mode, the environment changed. The threat ended, but the identity stayed. So you're no longer surviving a problem, you're surviving memory. You are no longer surviving a problem, but you're surviving a memory. So now how to escape? Separate your past from your present. Separate your past from your present. Ask yourself honestly, what am I still protecting myself from that no longer exists? What am I still protecting myself from that no longer exists? Because most oftentimes, we are protecting ourselves from a lot of the things that we've experienced. And we are no longer aware that the threat has long ended, the environment has long changed, but the identity still exists. Hence the importance of the question that says, what am I still protecting myself from that no longer exists? So that question on its own, it disrupts everything in your world. It really disrupts the unconscious patterns. It really disrupts you. It sends you somewhere. It gets you searching yourself. It sends you into introspection immediately. But the second point of how to then come out from survival zone or survival mode, shift from coping to creating. Shift from coping to creating. If you want to be creative, if you want to be a person of real solutions, if you want to be a person who doesn't react but who responds, you need to shift from coping to creating. Because survival asks, how do I get through this? But growth asks, what am I building? So it's important that for you to move from the zone, hence I said it's important that you allow yourself to have an excitement and an aspiration of the future. It's important that you allow yourself to be excited and to have the aspiration of the future. So you also need to regulate your nervous system. It's also important that you have to be able to regulate yourself, regulate your nervous system. You know? And I know that whenever people say such things as regulate your nervous system, it sounds as if that's a very big philosophical or psychological term that one cannot easily do without the help of a proper therapist or psychologist. Maybe because people's situations differ, maybe some might need that extra help from such people who are professional. But there are basic things that we can do and practice that can gradually lead us to that zone, that can gradually direct us to that path. It's practicing these simple steps: silence and stillness, slow breathing, physical movement, reflection, or journaling. And one of the things I'd like to add is the importance of have something to eat, man. Eat. We really downplay the importance of eating. We really downplay the importance of a lot of the anxiety and stress, as much as, yes, it causes us to refrain and to not have appetite most often, but eat, man. Eat. I don't know how I can overemphasize that. I'm not saying be a glutton. I'm not saying that, but have a proper meal. Eat. Don't deprive yourself from eating whenever you need a meal. And these things will help you to calm yourself down, to calm your nervous system. Enjoy stillness. Familiarize yourself with stillness. There's nothing happening that you will miss. You're in the moment. You're in the moment. And a lot of times what makes us to fail to plan, to be anxious of the next move, the next step, is because we fail to plan for the future. And we are planning for the future in the future. You know, we are planning for the next move while doing the next move. Hence, we will always be anxious. Anxiety will always be part of us because we are moving while planning, while redesigning, while acting. Whereas if we pre-plan, we pre-forecast, we have aspirations, we have dreams, we've redesigned the future, we wouldn't be so much on survival mode. So redefine safety. That's another point. Redefine safety. Because a lot of time, survival mentality says, you know, it thinks of safety as control. It thinks of growth as self-trust. You know, hence it is important that we understand how we are defining safe for ourselves. If our definition of safe is controlled, then we're in danger. If something is not properly done until it's done by you, if something is not properly done until it's done your way, if something is not properly done until it's done how you will feel safe about it, then we're having a problem with that. Because we need to redefine safety then. Because survival mentality thinks safety is control. But my last point before wrapping up this topic, because I was anticipating that this video doesn't become long, even the prep I have was supposed to make this video short. Allow yourself to want more without guilt. Allow yourself to want more without guilt. Allow yourself to want more without guilt. The without guilt is the important part of the statement. Allow yourself to want more. There's more that can come from you. You could think beyond South Africa, beyond Durban, beyond KZN. Allow yourself to want more without guilt. You can have as much money as you want. It's not wrong. You can have as much things you want. It's not more. You know? Because a lot of time, survival mentality always carries hidden shame. It always carries hidden shame. It always tells you should be grateful with the little that you have, and it deprives you to think beyond the little that you have now. Whereas life is always offering more than the little that you're holding. It always misinterprets gratitude for settling for less. It always misinterprets gratitude for settling for less. Whereas gratitude is embracing and accepting what you have, but it is not depriving you of wanting more from what you already have. Gratitude doesn't say, then stick to what you have because you are grateful for it, but it has room for you to desire more, to go for more, and to launch yourself to more. Hence, you need to allow yourself to want more without guilt. So it is very important that as people, as a generation, as a society, we move from survival mentality. We move from survival mentality. Unfortunately, survival mentality will keep us trapped. It will keep us in townships we live in. It will keep us in the schooling system we're in. It will keep us in the grouping that we are in the middle class that we are in. It will keep us in poverty that we are in. It will keep us in lack that we are in. It will keep us of mental lack that we are in, because we don't want to launch ourselves to the greater that life and earth has for us. We always see others deserving of more and not us. We always see other people, other groups, other genders, other races, other tribes deserving of more besides ourselves. Whereas gratitude is not accepting mediocrity, but gratitude is accepting what you have and having room for more. So, ladies and gentlemen, we should always remember that we have things that we need to learn, unlearn, and relearn. We have habits that we need to unlearn. We have growth mentality that we need to learn. And we have good things that we were taught that we need to relearn. That's very important. We need to be at a point where we are aware of where we're heading as a society. Where we're heading as a society shouldn't be automated, and it shouldn't be circumstance of what's happening in the today, but it should be an intentional build that we are genuinely building as a group of people. It should be something that we are as a collective are genuinely driving towards. It should be something that we are forging intentionally in this day and age and in this time. It shouldn't be circumstantial of what is happening around us today. We should stop having a generation that is a victim of circumstance. But we should have a generation that is designed by destiny because we were intentional in having a generation that is like that. How do you envision South Africa? How do you envision Durban? How do you envision KZN? I'm mentioning that place because it's where I'm at. But how am I envisioning that in the next 50 years if I'm doing nothing intentionally that will build towards that 50 years I'm looking towards? If we are going to ignore patterns, if we are going to ignore daily routines that are shaping something each and every day automatically, we will then always be wondering how did we end up where we are. We will always be wondering how did we land where we are as a society. We'll always be reacting instead of responding to situations because we were not intentional as individuals. In one of my books, the first one titled No One Owes You Anything, I talk on intentional building, where you're not just doing something because you want to be seen or known, but you are doing it because you are intentionally building something that is progressive. Not just for you, but a generational thing. In my recent book, the last book I've written, I've asked a question that says, what will the next generation inherit from us? I, as Lunga Khumalo, what will the next generation inherit from me? Will they inherit bad choices? Will they inherit excuses that I've made? Will they inherit lack, poverty, a weak mentality, and broken systems? Or will they inherit a progressive and a growing, mindset that we've invested intentionally as a generation? If I die in few years to come, what will be the memory of Lunga Khumalo? Beyond him being a writer, beyond him being a public speaker, beyond him being someone who was there, beyond him being in the lineage of Khumalo, beyond him being the last born, Katutuzile no wise man, and having his siblings, beyond that, what is that I'm leaving behind on earth? Am I leaving broken systems or am I leaving progressive systems that are going to change and empower the next generation? And until we have such conversations intentionally, unfortunately, we won't be heading anywhere as a generation. We won't be. We'll always be reacting to circumstances that are happening rather than being responding to things that we've seen and known that are coming in the next years. What are we predicting as this generation for the next 50 years? What are we predicting? Looking at how things are happening now, looking at what is growing in our society, looking at what is happening, the level of development in our society, the level of the growth economically, what are we predicting for the next 5 to 10 years? And what are we building that will make the generation that will be existing at the time benefits? Or how are we preventing some of the dangers that we are envisioning in the next 50 years? Currently, we have social issues that we're still failing to fix as a country and a society. And I'm not just putting that on the government, but I'm also putting it on the citizens themselves. Because collectively, as a collective, need to be patriots who are intentionally building this country into something progressive. So if we are not going to be intentional in building something as a generation, unfortunately, we will always be having similar problems. They will just be changing. They will just be reshaping themselves, and we'll consistently be giving them new names. But it's the same thing that we could have stopped and could have been able to give a proper solution to them. But because we don't have an ownership and an accountability, understanding or mentality, we'll always be throwing and will not be hitting the actual issue that we are facing as a people. So it is important that we have provoked conversations. It is important that we have candid conversation. It is important that we have these things so that we could be aware of where we are, because once you are aware of where you are, you will be aware of where you're heading. And once you're aware of where you're heading, you will then be able to put in place proper tools that you need to survive that era. So ladies and gentlemen, that was today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're having a great time, having a great day. Looking forward to having the next video. Looking forward to seeing you. Please help us by subscribing, liking, and sharing these videos. Share the link as much as you can. It helps us a lot. We are available on all social platforms: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. We are available across. Let's connect, let's have these conversations. Maybe something might come out from having such conversations. Thank you so much.